This webinar today it's funny. I have a couple quick stories as I start it. But first one is weeks ago, I was doing this webinar and had it scheduled. And the day before the webinar, I was like, or even the day of the webinar, I was like, I don't think people will be interested in hearing about law firm economics in your legal career. So I'm going to do another topic and prepare another group of slides for me. And so when I started the other webinar, which I thought was a much more interesting topic, everyone that was on the webinar was actually very mad that I wasn't giving a presentation about law firm economics in your career. So then I went back and I rescheduled this webinar last week. And as I was doing the webinar last week, the power failed, and they were removing a power pole out in front of my office, and that caused the power to fail. So here we are again. Hopefully this webinar will go through today. The only drawback today is I do have a hard stop and I do need to catch a flight later, so I don't have a ton of time for questions, but I will definitely, assuming that everything goes okay, complete this webinar today. So this topic, I think, is very important for a number of reasons. And the most important reason that it's important is because most people don't understand that a lot of what happens to you in your career is really depends on economics, and it depends on the economics of the law firm that you're in. It depends on the economics of the overall economy. And you're pretty much, your whole career is dependent upon a lot of times economic forces. And you can have a good run for a long time when the economy is running in your favor. And then you can have a bad run when it's not running in your favor. I think right now is probably the most important time that you could possibly hear this webinar because of what's going on in the economy. And in brief, what's going on is companies are running out of money. That's one of the reasons that banks have been failing recently. And as companies have been running out of money, that means they have less money for legal bills. And if they have less money for legal bills, that means that the law firms that are hiring you are going to have less money to pay you. So it's very important that you understand how economics are run in your legal career. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. So this is a quote, and it says, the notion that a partner or associate must produce 2,000 or 2,400 hours of billable work yearly virtually assures that some clients will be overbilled. Of course, almost all firms have stated policies that forbid unethical and illegal billing practices. The extent to which these policies are actually followed depends on the firm culture, on unspoken messages that leaders of the firm send to its lawyers. And when money becomes the primary goal, a law firm may end up choosing to systematically inflate client bills and even to bill for expenses not actually incurred for those clients. And that's of Seth Rosner. And this, of course, was a long time ago in 1992. Any legal career is really defined by economics. And that for a lot of young attorneys and law students is a mystery for a lot of people. And the economics of where you work are going to have a lot of significance in terms of what's going to happen in your legal career. And in order for you to be successful in your career, you really do need to have a good understanding of law firm economics, both before joining your law firm and then while you're there. And you need to make economics work in your favor. And a lot of attorneys are confused by law firm economics because they don't really understand what's going on. They think that maybe the most important thing is good work. They think that if you do, that a lot of factors, and law firms aren't necessarily telling their associates how the economics of their businesses work. And many don't even tell their partners. Some partners don't have a clue how the economics of the firm's work. And it's actually also very rarely ever taught in school. And so because there's such little information, you really need to understand what's going on. And that's what this is about today, and understand kind of the economics that are going on in the background. And that's today I'm going to talk about pretty much the economic model that governs large and mid-sized firms at the law clerk, associate, and the partner level. But this model also could work at smaller firms as well. And I'm not talking so much about things like paralegals and legal secretaries, and that's really a separate topic altogether. But I don't think this is a pleasant webinar in a lot of respects. I think maybe that's one reason I didn't do it one week, and maybe I attracted a power failure the last time I did it, because this is just, it does say a lot of negative things, I think, about the legal profession, but it also talks about topics that can't be ignored. And you're going to have a very difficult time succeeding at a high level inside of a law firm unless you understand economics and really how they work. And one thing I would also say about economics is that a lot of people use economics poorly, and meaning they overbill people or they do things that are wrong. Other people do it correctly, meaning that they don't cheat people and they do things right. And so your whole use of economics, how you understand economics, how you provide value, how you build for your value is really among the most important things you can understand as an attorney. And it's going to define your success as an attorney in a law firm you work in, or it's also will define it. And if you set up your own practice or however you end up working. So the first thing is the importance of billable hour to law firm economics. And you need to understand that large to mid-sized firms are set up to be profit centers and to make as much money as possible. They make money through their arrangements with their clients and how they bill their clients and how they collect money. And there's lots of different billing arrangements. There's fixed fee, there's contingency. But in almost all cases, large to mid-sized firms prefer to bill people by the billable hour approach. And a long time ago, law firms would bill clients by what they perceived as the value of the work they were doing. The law firms might quote a fee up front, and that would be what they charged. Or at the conclusion of a case, a partner in a law firm might even look how big the file was and how much their associate worked on it and tell their secretary something to the effect of, this feels like a $2,000 file, send them a bill for that. And there was a time when billing was not necessarily done based on the billable hour. Within the past 50 to 60 years, the transition has moved away from lawyers valuing their time the way they used to. And in the 19th and 20th century, they pretty much would just bill random standard fees based on their experience for performing a certain service, meaning this is what this costs, this is what that cost. A will might be $50 or an uncontested divorce, $200, a house closing, $100. And some clients didn't like that. And they felt that it led to price fixing and high hourly rates for some lawyers. And lawyers wanted to keep things that way. They didn't want to have hourly rates. They liked the idea that they could have efficiencies many times. And lawyers eventually, because there were concerns about price fixing, agreed to hourly rates as a standard for the industry and made it seem like it was a consumer protection benefit and something that benefited benefited the public. And that again is a quote from a book called How Lawyers Screw Their Clients. And so the legal landscape has really changed. And today it's based on the billable hour. And as an aside, there's actually been lots of studies that show that when they use the billable hour as a way to bill people, the rates that attorneys get and how much money they collect is actually much higher than if they don't. And so most law firms these days really do rely on the billable hour. And I'm not sure if it's the best move. I don't think I've ever encountered a situation where an attorney was told they were billing too much or worked too much on a single project. It just very rarely happens. Conversely, I've come across lots of cases where people have been told that they weren't billing enough time or they weren't working hard enough. And I think a lot of decisions about who to keep and who to let go are often based more on production, many times in the value of the work produced for the client. And law firms, I don't think ever pad their bills necessarily, but I'm not saying that, but they certainly won't tell you you're doing a bad job if you're billing a lot of hours. People are pushed at an institutional level to bill as many hours as possible. And the competition really is for high billable numbers. It's interesting. I remember when I was working for a judge, what happened with him was they used to circulate something that they would review, and they would see how many cases that he had on his docket and how many cases other judges had on her docket and vice versa. And so they would go back and forth and they would compare their ability to get rid of cases quickly, meaning without a lot of work, or to dispose of things. And so the one that had the smallest docket was also considered doing the best job. In the legal profession, partners could get lists of hours of other partners, of associates. That's a lot of times what's a controlling factor. While they may not be pushing people to pad their bills, the competition is for the numbers that you write down. And the client may like it because they're receiving an accurate bill for the hours reported by the attorneys who worked on a given matter. But is that always necessary for people to spend that much time on a given task? And that's often a different story. I can tell you that I've heard of lots of stories of people getting in trouble inside of law firms for various efficiencies, meaning they've gone in and they've discovered ways that that the client doesn't need a lot of hours, or they can do something much more quickly. And when a partner tells them to do something a certain way, and that's a way to get in trouble. You don't always know best, but a lot of times, a lot of attorneys, if you're not billing hours and you're finding ways not to bill hours, a lot of times people aren't necessarily going to like that. And what I'm trying to help you understand now is the importance of the billable hour, why high hours are necessary for a law firm to be profitable, and as well as how law firms will evaluate you based on the number of hours. And at each point in your legal career, the billable hour is going to take on a different type of significance for you. And so you need to understand that as well. Various seniority levels in a law firm. Most American law firms are really set up the exact same way. They generally have law clerks, which could be people working during the school year, summer associates, or young attorneys awaiting bar results. And then in large law firms, a lot of times they only have summer associates. Then the law firm will often have junior attorneys, mid-level attorneys, and senior associates. And then the law firm will have attorneys that are at the counsel level and the partner. And there's also going to be different levels of partner, which are going to be income partners and equity partners, for example. And at each stage of seniority, your value and the economic expectations that the law firm has of you are going to change. So the first one is a law clerk. So if you're a law student or a recent graduate and working in a law firm, you're generally called a law clerk. Some law firms may call you an associate before you pass the bar, but generally you're a law clerk. Most organized law firms have law clerks. They're typically called summer associates in large law firms during the summer. Sometimes they're also hired during the year, and they can make a lot of money. They can make more than $4,000 a week. And you can make a lot of money in some of the larger firms. And from the law firm's perspective, the purpose of this position is really, it's allowing the law firm to do recruiting, meaning they're able to recruit people and bring them in and see how they work out, but they're also giving them the opportunity to try before you buy. And they typically use them for tasks which are not necessarily profitable for the law firm, but are helpful. It could be research projects. It could be work for clients on larger matters. They could be used during the summer or the school year for kind of mundane tasks that the law firm doesn't want its associates working on. But really, I believe that most law firms have an unspoken goal for their summer associates. And I basically think what they're looking for is whether or not that person seems like they're going to play the economic game inside the law firm. And it is a game, and there's rules, and they can usually tell fairly quickly if you're going to play the game or not. So this is a story that I tell this story. I've heard multiple versions of the story. I have my own version of the story that I was involved in, but this is just a call I received several years ago from a summer associate inside a large law firm. She just received their first review from the law firm, very harsh review, meaning the person was told they were doing a bad job, lots of comments about their attitude, their drive, and their focus, and just things that seemed like they were coming out of left field. The person was from a top 5 law school and never been criticized like that, had good grades. And after several minutes, I asked the associate to stop talking because I knew exactly what was wrong. I knew that she was on the path to not getting an offer. And I asked her, how many hours are you billing? How hard are you working? And she said she'd been billing about 35 hours a week. And this is a warning sign, meaning if you're in a large law firm in a big city and working 35 hours a week in the summer, that's not they're not going to be that impressed with that. And I asked her how assignments are handed out and a few other questions. And then I just basically said, get all the assignments you can that are not billable to firm clients, meaning you can just write down as many hours as you want, as long as you work on them. And you don't want to be unethical. And then for every non-billable assignment you get, just work. There's no tomorrow. Read as much as you can. Throw yourself into it. Stay in the library late. Bill at least 70 hours a week for the next 5 weeks of your summer. Work weekends and whenever you get a chance. And that's all you need to do, meaning you just need to throw yourself into the work and play the economic game and show them that if they hire you, they're going to get a product that is going to be 50% more efficient or 70% more efficient than a product that's billing 40 hours a week. That's all you need to do. And at the end of the summer, out of 18 summer associates, this was in a bad year. This was a long time ago. I think this was like 2009 or 10 when the market was really slow. She was one of 5 people to get an offer out of 18 people. And at the end of the summer, all she got was glowing praise. She was praised for her attitude, her work ethic. People liked her all of a sudden. And is this a sad commentary on the status of the legal profession? Were there other things she was doing when she billed more hours? I'm sure there were. She was probably working more hours and getting along better with people and things and impressing people with her interest in the subject matter. But she was taking that and making her job an obsession. In virtually every case where I've counseled attorneys in serious troubles with their law firm, I found that most of the time the problem is that they're just not billing enough hours. And they're just not perceived as working hard enough. The number of hours they're billing, by extension, is about how much money it talks about how much money the law firm's making off them. People that don't get offers in the summer, typically, the law firm believes that it's going to be difficult to get them to bill hours, or they're not going to take it seriously. Or if they don't get offers when they're a summer associate, many times they're not working hard enough to get assignments. And it's just law firms take this very seriously. And this I wrote several years ago, but I wrote in one instance out of several placements I made over the past 3 years, not one had ever been fired. And when I spoke to the firm about why the person had been fired, they complained about the fact that the associate frequently left the office before 5:30. Law firms, when people are fired, it's almost always about something to do with hours, something to do with not working hard enough, something to do about enough face time, something to do about, it's never about quality. It's sometimes about the quality of the work, but it's almost always about not working hard enough. This is just what it is. It seems like it's always that. And a lot of times people are and the law firm claiming they don't have enough work and that the partners aren't assigning work to them. When questioned closely, I often perceive that when these attorneys are given work, they're perceived as not working hard enough, meaning they're not billing enough hours, they're not thorough enough, they're not putting in enough drive, they're not getting things done in time, and they're not really going all out on their assignments. The assignments go to the people that are going to work the hardest and do the best job. And frankly, many times, if you bill a lot of hours, you will do a better job. And large law firms have clients willing to pay for it. So why wouldn't you? But partners are individually and as a group basically compensated based on the amount of work that the associates they assign work to do. And a lot of partners would much rather assign work to an associate who's going to work extremely hard in something and bill a lot of hours rather than an associate who can figure out a way to get the work done just as quickly and effectively. I can't go into enough detail about this, about how much you can mess up your career by underworking matters that may deserve a lot of work. And you may call it a conspiracy, you may call it something else, but in a lot of law firms, you're really expected, especially law firms that have large clients willing to pay, you're really expected to bill a lot of time to things. And often when I say warranted or not, they want you to go in and do very deep work and think about things. And they're going to reinforce that through bonuses that are given to the hardest work associates, those who bill the most hours, and more subtle ways. So if you're not billing a lot of hours and you're doing things in a way that's not full on and you're not enthusiastic and you're not excited about the work and you're not finding extra stuff to do, that's who's going to get the work. And any attorney working inside a law firm, if your perceived value, which as an associate or a law clerk, your perceived value can only come through the number of hours that you're billing, why wouldn't you bill as many hours as you can? You really have no choice. You have to bill as much work as you possibly can when you're a young associate. That's all you can do. That's the only thing you have to offer. And billing as much hours and then doing the best work you can. And the nice thing about having all this time is one thing I would say to you too, is if you're at a mid-sized to large law firm and you're worried about the fact that you have a lot of work, this work is a blessing because you're getting the opportunity to go deep and to be able to spot issues and to become a real expert in what you're doing. If you work in a firm that doesn't have a lot of opportunity and you're just expected to get through cases and stuff very quickly, you're not going to be the same quality of attorney as someone that's given a lot of work to do. You're going to be a much better attorney if you're given a lot of work. So this is really what they're looking for. The law firms want people that are willing to put in a lot of work and get things done and go into a lot of depth and become better attorneys. So it's just in the name of the game. And I just want to make a final point too about getting a lot of work in large law firms because it is so important. Large law firms and even mid-sized law firms and places that have clients that are willing to pay for a lot of work, they win a lot more cases, especially up against smaller firms and things than the smaller firms a lot of times because they have more time to put into things. And so time is actually a blessing, and having the time to build these hours is a blessing. But again, your value is through the hours that you work. The junior associate is very funny. A lot of times law firms will say things like, we don't make any money off our junior associates. You're a cost center, not a profit center. Most law firms will circulate some statement to that effect to their associate, to junior associates, telling them that they're not making money off them and that they have to write off their time. And to some extent, there's some truth to that. And some law firms will write off their time. But most junior associates are just as profitable, but maybe not as profitable as mid-level to senior associates. And law clerks are important because they allow the law firm to see how hard they're going to work. And sometimes they can make some money off them. But the junior associate is really the core of the economic engine. There's a lot of reason for this, but the main reason is that clients really don't have a good understanding of the economic engine many times. The clients, whether they're large or small, they do look at the bills the firms send out. And this is an example of a small law firm where the law clerk, summer associate might be 140, first year might be 170, second year and so forth. And you can see these billing rates and how they go up. And you can see here the first year associate is much less, of course, than the partner. And in most law firms, a partner actually is a much better deal for the client because a partner can figure out things much more quickly than the junior associate could. I had instances when I was like a law clerk or a junior associate where I could spend days trying to figure out some sort of legal problem, where if you give it to a really good partner, they could figure it out in 15 or 20 minutes of thought. And so a junior associate could literally work sometimes for days on a matter that a really good partner could figure out in 15 to 20 minutes. So what is the better deal? Obviously, the partner thinking about it. And if you're an associate with more than 1 year of experience in a large law firm, you start being aware of that because you see how quickly people can poke through problems and things. And I'm sure you've probably seen wherever firm you are, lots of associates working many hours in different assignments and more than they might need to for an existing assignment. And then the employment of junior associates by law firms obviously wouldn't make a lot of sense. If the junior associates are billing all this time, that other people can figure things out. But each year they're hired, lots of them are hired through summer associate and other classes, and to begin work on important legal matters for clients. And these associates all need a great deal of training to become effective at their work. And they're an excellent source of profits for law firms. And I'll tell you why. The reason is because from the point of view of the law firm and the client, when you hire a law firm, you're generally working for a partner, and the partner will say, I'm going to figure out this to the client, most efficient way to get the work done for you. And a lot of times there's little matters that they may want to research and have analyzed. So partners will go and they'll spot all these issues that really aren't that crucial to the case, but they'll have associates go write memos and do research, and they'll generally say something to the client like, before we figure out what we're going to do, it'd best to get the answers to these questions. I could work on them. My billing rate's quite high. And so we'll have a junior associate do the work, and their billing rate is less than half of what mine is, and so forth. And then the junior associate goes out to work. And then the junior associate their value is based on how many hours. So they tend to have a lot of incentive to work hard in these matters, in these small matters, and they'll bill as many hours as they can to the project. And then they may be asked to research questions, sometimes things that would be nice to know the answers to, but spending $10,000 or $20,000 researching a question that may not be that important to the case. Is that necessary? Sometimes it isn't. But the junior associate may not have highly developed research skills, may spend a lot more time than necessary, and under the belief that the memo needs to be 100% flawless. They have to spend a lot of time. When you're writing any assignment, by the way, as a junior associate, you should write it and do whatever the assignment is, but then you should spend probably 2 to 3 times whatever it takes you to put this down on paper, making sure it's perfect before you give it to a partner, because then the partner may turn it over to the client, and you can't always just give the answer. You have to make it perfect, and that's the job. And then the partner may think of new issues they want the client to explore. They'll like it if you come up with ideas to do it. And so it's just an endless way to keep billing. And it's not necessarily that the partners do anything wrong. They're lining up all their ducks so they can understand it. But if clients are willing to pay for it, that's how it works. And when the bill's produced, the partner may have this kind of conversation. They'll say, I'm glad we used this junior associate to do the work. There turned out to be a lot more issues that we need to consider. We found this is going to save us all this time. I wanted to ensure that we did a good job. And just to make sure you're happy, I've reduced the junior associate's billable hours by 20%. I really appreciate you trusting us. And so this kind of conversation, I've heard it multiple times. Partners have had it with me for work that I've given them. It just happens probably thousands of times a day. The economics of the junior associate make a lot of sense from the law firm's perspective, especially if the junior associate knows how to play the game, which means billing a lot of hours, doing the work very thoroughly, very carefully checking your work, coming up with new questions that you can ask that could be answered, and really taking these assignments as seriously as you possibly can, working as many hours as you can on the assignments to make them as good, and can make a huge difference. And that's what you're paid to do as a junior associate. And so a junior associate could be given do incredible amounts of work and incredible amounts of research as the partner works the client up and tells them how important it is that they need to know all these answers, how this saved them from that, and so forth. And then the more time the junior associate spends on an issue, the more money the law firm makes. And that's just how it works. And in the process, the law firm is able to train the junior associate on the client's dime. I've had discussions when I've gone to a law firm for different legal matters, and the partners just said something like, do you think you can stomach $50,000 a month in legal fees for this? That's just the conversation. Like it's not even, they figure that they can, regardless of, I'm thinking of a particular case that wasn't even that complex. So this is how the conversations go a lot of times. The law firms work for large clients that can afford to spend a lot of money in legal fees. They do work that's very thorough for those clients. Is there anything wrong with that? No, there's nothing. There's nothing wrong with that, because this is how, again, a lot of times the large law firms are able to beat the smaller law firms. It's by more training, but by more depth into the matters that they're working on, and more understanding of the legal matters, and just going into more depth. And again, I'm not saying that this is always right, but I'm saying it is the norm at most law firms, and the ability to marshal large platoons of junior associates on various matters can be very effective and profitable for law firms. And so you just need to understand that your economic job as a junior associate is to get out there and to work as hard as you can on the matters, to go into as much depth, to learn about the law, and to just go do whatever you can and turn in the most flawless work you can. And if the law firm can rely on you to produce a lot of work and hours and to find new jobs to be done, not only are you helping the big client win a matter, but you're also, or get the best edge of a matter, but you're also helping the partner that you're working for, partners, get the results that she wants to get. And the reason I bring this up too, that it's important, is this is the whole gist of this, and all these hours is how many times the best law firms are able to get the best results for their clients, because they go deeper and deeper into matters. And by doing that, they're able to find solutions that people that aren't thorough don't do. And so is it necessary to bill incredible numbers of hours to certain matters like law firms do? Maybe not all the time, but at the same time, if you're a big company and you're doing a transaction for hundreds of millions of dollars, or the law firm can find you ways to save a lot of money on something, or you have the ability to do something else, then the client has the ability to pay for it, then it's okay. There's nothing wrong with this, and you shouldn't worry about it. What you should do is provide as much value as you possibly can. So the next attorney is a mid-level associate. And after you get 2 to 3 years of experience as a law firm, you typically become a mid-level associate. What I consider a mid-level associate really is someone that has become competent in the work that they're doing. So after all this work and years of doing the kind of work that a junior associate does, you've learned a lot about the law. You've learned a lot about different cases and different ways in transactions and different ways to do things. You become more efficient, and you're reaching the area where you can run deals and you can do things in a way that you understand. And if you speak with junior associates, a lot of times working in major law firms, they'll say things like, I'm just doing this for a year or two. And what happens a lot of times is attorneys will leave after becoming mid-level associates, because this is the time when it becomes much more difficult for law firms to hold on to them. And a lot of times they'll leave when they're mid-level associates because they're in the realm where they're actually expected to manage matters and to be competent lawyers and to do things in an effective way. And almost at the point after, when you get to be 3, 4, or 5 years of experience, where you're doing you should be able to manage cases and transactions and have a good understanding. And you're also at a level where you're expected to be having the ability to talk to clients, where you're having the ability to understand the work that needs to be done in different matters. Your quality of legal work should be very good, and they're very profitable law firms. They fill a good niche for law firms. The reason junior middle-level associates are profitable is because they can be given a lot of assignments that a partner could do. They can also delegate a lot of work to junior associates, and they also can just explain matters to junior associates, which partners don't like to have to do, to explain what people are trying to learn. So they pretty much know their way around. It's a good way to put it, and they can be trusted. And so if the mid-level associate is good, they're also going to have the ability to gauge the amount of work that the partner needs from them, both from them and from the junior associate on a given matter. So they'll be able to understand like how much work they need to put in. They'll be able to understand how the case needs to be staffed, or the matter needs to be staffed. And at that point, they're usually competent enough to get most of the work done without asking a lot of questions. So people like giving work to people that just can run with it and know how to do things. And at that point, the mid-level associate is really a great thing for the partners to have, because their billing rate is not as high. They know what they're doing. They can run matters. They can explain things to junior associates. They can anticipate issues. And if they're good, their billing rate is also an issue that's not going to be as high as senior associate or partners. And they also can give clients the appearance of being able to do work at a low cost, and that's more complicated than that typically given to junior associates. And so their billing rates are lower, and really the mid-level associates where it's at. They're the most marketable. They're always the best candidates for moving, because they offer a lot of advantage other types of candidates do not offer law firms. They also know what they're doing. They can be assigned work without being threatening to partners most of the time, meaning they also are not threatening to senior associates, so they can be hired laterally, and their billing rates are high enough that it doesn't threaten partners, which I'll explain in a minute. And again, here's some billing rates, just some examples of billing rates. Again, you can see here that the third year might be $235 an hour compared to the first year. So it's just a little bit higher. But then you go here and you can see as these rates get higher, the difference between the mid-level and the partner, it's pretty significant compared to the seventh year of counsel. And the billing cost for mid-level associates, meaning your third through fifth year, it's not as threatening to the client as the billing rates start to be as the attorney gets more senior. And so the mid-level associate is also quite effective, and also often just as effective as a partner in terms of the work they do. So this is just an example right here of a $100,000 matter a partner of the firm brings in, and here's how the billing might be divided up. It might 15% of the attorney might receive 15% of the billings of the matter generated, meaning so if the partner has $100,000 in billing, they'll get 15% of the billings other people do. But if they do it individually, they'll get 30%, and then another maybe 55% of that go to overhead. I hope this makes sense. So partner brings in a $100,000 matter, and they are able to get 30% of the work that they do, meaning they get 30% of the work that they do, or 15% of the billings of someone else doing the work. So you can see they make more money when they do the work themselves. I hope that just makes sense. And this is how it works in most firms. Every firm has different matters that they compensate people, but under this particular model, and they're all different, the partner is compensated most highly for the matters they work on themselves. And then they're compensated much less for the work that they give others to do on their matters. And the partner obviously has more incentive to do the work themselves, but they also have to please the client. So the partner, they don't want to do too much work, because if they spend a lot of the time themselves, and then it doesn't look as good. So every type of work they get will be different. Some work may require the partner to do all the work themselves, but for the most part, in order to hold on to clients, the partner wants to give others in the firm work to do. And the reason for that is that because they don't want to price their services too high, because if they do that, the clients will go elsewhere. But if they don't price their service high enough, then they'll lose money. So the partner really needs to find a balance. And having the mid-level associate do work means that a lot of the work that the partner might normally bill out is done at a lower cost, and that saves the client money and is good for the client. And then the more sophisticated work, the partner can do themselves. And so law firms, really mid-level associates, just understanding the idea that if if a mid-level associate is doing the work, what's more likely to happen is the work can be done, a higher work that would normally cost a lot more can be done in a very economically efficient way. And then you get to the senior associate. And the senior associate can be very dangerous for a lot of law firms. Senior associates may have 6 years, sometimes it'd be 8 or 9, but they have more experience. And as a senior associate level, most attorneys know exactly what they're doing. Their legal knowledge might be as good as, or at least comparable to partners, but there's not really as much demand in the marketplace for senior associate. Senior associates, and this is largely due to the operation of law firm economics, and then I'll explain that in a minute. The reason that the senior associate is a problem is because a lot of times the billing rate of the senior associate will approach that of a partner. So you can see if a partner is required to bill a certain number of hours, then they're unlikely to give work to senior associates because the billing rates are very close. And it's going to cut in to the partner to how much money the partner makes. Again, if a partner's billing rate, I just want you to understand this. If the partner has say the partner bills at $1,000 an hour. If the partner does the work themselves, they might make 30% of that, which is $300. If they give it to if they give work of that complexity to a senior associate, and the senior associate's work maybe bills out at $900 an hour, the partner only makes like $140 or something. So the partner and the client would much prefer to have the partner do the work than the senior associate. Unless the firm has a great deal of work coming in from clients that are ready to pay large hourly rates, partners would often much rather do the work themselves than give it to a senior associate because it looks better having the partner do the work. It the partner will also make more money. So again, partners can only do so much work on their own matters without upsetting the client. The partner wants to make the client feel like the client's getting a good deal. So it's staffing junior associates and mid-level associates. But when you start staffing a senior associate on matters, that makes many times the partner's not making as much money, and the client would often rather have the partner do it. So senior associates, it becomes very difficult for them to get work many times to survive. In order for there to be a lot of work for senior associates, a law firm needs to have a lot of work that can be billed out at high hourly rates. It needs to have usually like large institutional clients or people that will pay for it. And even if the law firm doesn't have that type of work, the presence of a senior associate is going to create pressure on partners to generate work to give to these senior associates, which I hope makes sense. The senior associates that are the best at getting work are going to have the highest billable hours, the most likely to survive inside of a law firm. So if you're doing really good work as a senior associate, if the clients like you and want you to work on matters, if the partners like you and want you to work on matters, and then you're going to be in good shape. But most of the time, because it's costing the partners a lot of money to give you work, you have to be doing very good work if you're going to be able to survive as a senior associate. And it's often because of the high billing rates, the senior associates in a lot of large law firms start having to generate their own clients, meaning you start getting a lot of pressure when you become a senior associate to either to make partner or to start getting your own client. And if you're able to generate a lot of work, meaning you're able to get work from partners or you're able to get work from outside clients, then you're going to be considered for a partner or counsel position. But you need to be able to do that. And if you can't generate work points, the law firm is going to ask you to leave. The partners don't want to give you work because it's too costly for them. If the clients would rather have the partners do the work than you, that's a problem as well. And it's very important to understand that as a junior associate, you have the luxury of working all these hours and being liked and evaluated that way. As a mid-level associate, you're very much in demand. But as a senior associate, it becomes much harder because of the economic pressures, because your billing rates start approaching those of partners, and partners don't make as much money when they give you the work to do. And also the clients would often prefer to have the partners do the work as opposed to the senior associate. So there becomes a lot of pressure as you get more senior to get work, and it becomes much harder to stay employed. And it's one of the hardest points in your career. Most senior associates would often much prefer to be mid-level to junior associates. Again, most partners would actually would love to go back to a situation where they're getting work. But it's also important to understand from the perspective of how you're evaluated at each stage. You're going to be evaluated as a associate differently from stage to stage. So the junior associate, the kind of overwhelming way that they're evaluated is they're told their work's not good, and to make them do better work, they're told that they're given the impression that they need to work harder on things to get their hours up. After a couple of years of that, as they get more competent, their reviews start to get very good, and they start to be told that they're doing much better work. And so as they're told they're doing better work, then they're made to feel good. So the mid-level associate, they start saying things like, you're on the right track. Everybody really appreciates the work you're doing. We're getting, because you suddenly are profitable and you're working and you've learned the way to work effectively. And then when you become a senior associate, if the law firm has a lot of senior level work, then you may be getting good reviews, but most of the time the reviews will start not being as positive, meaning you may not be told as much positive news, and you may not feel like you're really doing as good of a job as you might have thought when you were a mid-level associate. Things start to get cold again. And so you have a good period when you're younger, and then as you get more senior, things get a little scarier. And then the next one, of course, is the partner and counsel level attorneys. A lot of partners will always say that they wish that they were associates again, because there's so many different stresses that partners experience from an economic standpoint. The most successful partners, of course, like what they're doing, but at the partner level, the responsibility is really to continue to do good legal work, but also to continue to get work, whether it's from other partners or outside clients. And the partner's also expected to feed other people as well if they're bringing in work, meaning give work to junior to senior associates at the largest firms as well. So that's the job of the partners. And the partners really, as you can see, their job is really to bring in work. So let's talk about what all this means for your career. At each stage of your career, really what's most important is your ability to generate revenue through the billable hour. And it's really much harder than it may first appear. As a law clerk and associate or summer associate, you're going to be evaluated based upon your work product and how much people like you, but you're also going to be evaluated based on whether or not you show promise to work under the law firm's economic engine. And I've seen, when I see people not get offers, most often it's because they didn't fit in with the firm's economic model. Now, there's a lot of reasons for not getting offers. I'm not saying these are the only reasons. Sometimes people behave inappropriately. Sometimes they just aren't a good fit for the firm for a lot of reasons. But the biggest mistake you can make when you're young as a summer associate or junior associate is telling people that certain work doesn't need to be done, or take on projects without a lot of enthusiasm and not get excited about matters. At the junior associate level, your responsibility is really to do the work you're asked to do, and to work as hard as you can on the work you are given. You just need to really go all out. And you really, this is the job. This is the only thing you have to give when you're young. Is you have certainly your knowledge and your legal knowledge, but it's the hours and the time you put into different matters is really the most important thing. And the culture of the law firm, when you see movies, when you hear about it in school, it's always young people working hard and new associates working hard. And this is what drives the economic engine. Law firms make a lot of money from junior associates working long hours. And in order to succeed, you need to work long hours. In most professions too, for example, in the medical profession, I have residents and interns and things that are expected to work 48-hour shifts and all this sort of thing. And it's just how it works. In academia, they have teachers' assistants that are PhD students and that are teaching. And so all professions to some extent rely on people that are just starting out working very hard and long hours. And then when you get to be a mid-level associate, you're often given work because you can do the work efficiently, and in most cases, you can do it competently. And mid-level associates may be profitable in most law firms, but the real value is to the client is they can get the work done competently and at a reasonable price. And partners like them because their billing rate is low enough that they can really keep the cost of the work down. And to succeed as a mid-level associate, you need to be competent, but you also need to work very hard. And you also need to be able to get as much work as you possibly can to survive. Now, as a mid-level associate, it's often very easy to get work compared to a senior level associate because you suddenly can do the work. So whether it comes through other lawyers in the firm or work you generate on your own, you still need to be able to get as much work as you possibly can. And then, of course, senior associates, it's very difficult. So this is where you need to start thinking if you have the ability to bring in work on your own, or also if you can get work from others. And the same thing holds true for partners. It's interesting. Most firms, the senior associates, their ability to generate work, their skill at getting along with others, their skill at getting work from partners that have the work. This is the name of the game as they get more senior, and they need to be very good at that. And it's a very hard time in every career, and then also the partners as well. In order to stay employed as a partner, you need to either be getting work from other people or be able to generate your own work. Regardless of the firm, the economic model is kind of the same. The importance is always to generate as much work as possible. When an attorney chooses the law firm they want to work for, the most important thing they really need to consider is whether or not they can move up the food chain with kind of their given set of skills and workability. And in most cases, the only way it's possible is to get work. And so you really, unless you're billing hours and things, it's very difficult. And the best firms for most people that they believe, and law students believe this, lateral associates believe this, a lot of times junior associates believe this, everybody wants to work in the largest and most prestigious firms. These firms also have the highest salaries and often the most kind of fleshed out economic models. And a lot of times this may be the best choice for you, or it may not. But the key to survival in all of these firms is your ability to generate work in billable hours. This is the whole economic model. For the larger the firm, the more important it is for you to generate work. And you need to generate work from associate or other attorneys in the firm. And then at some point, if that doesn't work out for you, you need to generate it from clients as well. And you need to keep generating work. As a junior associate, it's extremely important that you have the ability to get as many hours as you possibly can, which means you need to have a pleasing personality, you need to be able to work hard, and means you need to be enthusiastic. As a mid-level, it's the same thing. And as a senior associate, you need to be very competent, the kind of person that other people trust with work, someone that is also going to work lots of hours, someone that can get work from the clients as well as from the partners that are given to you. A lot of skill goes into your ability to generate work at that point in time and to do the best you possibly can. And in the larger law firms, people like the larger law firms because as a young attorney, there's a lot of work to give you and it can work. But most law firms can only give you work if they have work to give you. And if large law firms have massive clients, they're usually going to have a limited amount of work to give out at the partner associate and senior associate level, which is important to understand, meaning as you get more senior, it becomes much harder for you to get work, especially if you don't have business. A lot of what I talk about is about your ability to consistently generate business, to consistently generate work. But you also need to be able to generate work in your own firm. And that means playing the game. That means networking with the partners in your own firm. It means doing the work the way they want it. It means making people that have the work like you. It means getting close to people with work. It means making clients like you and wanting to give you work. All these things are extremely important. And as a mid-level and junior associate, you have the benefit of being very attractive to give work to because of the way the economic model works. And you need to become as competent as possible and use those hours. It's actually not a bad thing being given tons of hours as a junior associate. The reason it's not a bad thing is it's helping you develop your skills and your abilities as an attorney. And as you're able to develop your skills and abilities as an attorney, you're more competent. You understand matters better. You have the ability to spot issues and other types of work that can be done. And that's good. And then as a senior associate, you have to be able to, and a partner, your goal is to continue working. And it's at this point that because it becomes very difficult, that a lot of people will go in-house. People are no longer giving you work. You have to actually fight for it. You have to figure out how to get work on your own because you're no longer as attractive to the firm to give work to. It's very important to realize that the more senior you get, the more difficult things are going to be for you if you don't get work, even in the largest firms. And so your options are either start generating business or get very close to partners that have a lot of work that you believe can continue giving you work and as you become a partner. Because if that doesn't happen, then you're in trouble. I can't tell you how many stories and how much pain people go through at the point of their careers where they start getting senior because people stop giving them work, not because they don't like them, but because the economic model doesn't encourage giving senior people work. The partners would prefer to do it themselves, or the clients would prefer them to. It just becomes very difficult. So at the point in your career where a lot of people become senior, a lot of people will go in-house or to smaller firms. And the reason a lot of people want to go in-house at this point in their career is because it's an escape from the competition to get work. And so it is an escape, and it's a good escape. It's a way that you can escape this kind of endless competition of trying to get work is by going in-house, or you can continue competing. Smaller firms often have lower billing rates, which means the firms will often have clients. It's easier to get clients many times than a large law firm. And so these matters can also be worked on by attorneys that are senior, lower billing rates. So that can help you as well. But so a lot of times people will go in-house or to smaller firms. And again, if your billing rates are lower in a large law firm, you can often attract your own clients. And a large law firm because a large law firm's billing rates are so high, that may make it very difficult for people to bring in all but the largest clients. I've seen matters where partners were on the verge of losing their job and then all of a sudden brought in a huge client. I've seen people that were senior associates that were in the process of losing their jobs as well, or being asked to move and bringing in large clients. And so people do it all the time in large firms, but it really is something that you need to be aware of, that this pressure is going to build throughout your career. And it's for economic reasons that you need to continually be understanding the importance of generating your own book or getting close to people in your firm that have a lot of this work. And it should be top of mind. When I say top of mind, I mean that you should be working for partners in your firm if you're an associate that you believe have a lot of work, and you should be watching them and seeing what you can do to get on their good side. You should be working with, if you're a mid-level associate, you should be working on matters and trying to develop an expertise where you believe you'll eventually be able to get clients. All these things are necessary for surviving in the law firm world. And a lot of times people will say, oh, it's too tough, or I can't do it. But people figure it out, and just being aware, like you are in this webinar right now, learning about these rules is very important. It's going to help you understand what the pressures are in the background. And I don't think that it is really that complex. You just need to know that at every stage of the game, you need to be being able to work. You need to generate a lot of work when you're a junior associate, and you need to generate a lot of work when you're a mid-level associate, and then you need to generate a lot of work when you're a senior associate and also a partner. And that's what you need to figure out. How do I get work? How do I do it? Because people do it, but you need to be able to do that. And if you can't get more work, and then you're in trouble. And there's some firms where, by the way, no matter how hard you play the game, that it can be exceptionally difficult to ever become a partner, to get your own work, but people do it. And so you need to figure out how to do it. And it's really the most important thing in the legal career, and your legal career, is understanding these economic models that are in the background all the time. Okay, so I'm going to take a quick break. I'm glad we finally got this webinar done. I'm going to take a quick break. I'm going to come back. I'm leaving to the airport in a little bit, so I only have time for a couple questions. And if there's more questions, I'll try to answer them as well next week. But I will be back in just 1 second. Thanks. All right, so I'm going to go to questions. It doesn't look like I have much time here, but let me go. Okay, so the first question is, let's see, how many billable hours do most law firms require? So it depends on the law firm, but the thing about billable hours is typically the more hours you bill, the better off you're going to be. It's important to understand that the more hours that you bill in any firm, the more likely you are to be considered the most valuable associate. A lot of times, the larger firms, many require over 2,000 hours. Some law firms, even more than 2,500 hours is the norm, but it just all depends on the firm that you're trying to work in and often the market. So different markets also have different requirements. Different size firms often have different requirements. Sometimes the largest firms will have different requirements. It also can depend on your practice area. So certain practice areas like tax or, patent oftentimes don't have anywhere near the crazy hours because the thought processes involved people are doing the work are much more involved. So it really depends on the firm. But my advice is to want to have the reputation for often being the hardest working associate wherever you are. And even partners are often expected to bill a lot of hours, and partners are often the ones that bill the most hours because they also need to be making a major contribution to the firm and its bottom line. Okay, the next question. Let's see. What are the benefits can a law firm expect to see when investing in technology? That's an interesting question. I don't know. It would be obviously more efficiency. It can help the law firm with their ability to do things more efficient. Many times they can also build that stuff to their clients. Let's see. What are some of the best ways to handle the pressures of generating work in a large law firm? So I think it's an interesting question. And in terms of the generating work in a large law firm. So there's a couple different ways to generate work in a large law firm. One is from the people inside the law firm and being put on matters inside the law firm. And then the other way to generate work inside a large law firm is to generate it externally. Typically, people are able to generate work externally only after they become an expert and have some special skills in a certain area. People that do very well at generating work in large law firms will do things like they'll spend a lot of time networking, they'll spend a lot of time going out and meeting people, but then they'll also do their best to network internally. I think one of the biggest problems of trying to network or trying to generate work in the largest law firms is really related to the ability to work internally. And so most people will spend all of their time and effort doing work inside of the firm and working for the firm's clients and not put time into generating work externally. And I think that's the biggest thing that ends up holding people back. So unless you can figure out how to generate work externally, it becomes very hard. So the question is, how do you do that? I think most people that do it figure out just how to get into various groups and how to get out there and how to be seen. And unless you're doing that, it's going to be very difficult to get work. So you need to be able to be out there and be seen. By being seen, I mean that you need to have the ability for people to recognize you as someone that's good in something. You need to have the ability to meet with potential clients. You need to have the ability to track down potential clients. You need to be someone that's seen as a good representative of your firm. You need to understand something about marketing. And then you need to put in a lot of your time to also do that. A lot of times the people that are the best at this, they protect themselves on two different levels. One, they're very good at getting work internally inside their firm. And then the second thing that they're very good at is putting time into getting work externally and being persistent. If you're continually trying to generate work internally, meaning all you're doing is trying to get work internally, you're fighting what is probably not a smart battle, because you're never going to have any type of independence if you continue to do that. You need to put time into learning how to generate work externally. And by that, the people that are the best at it tend to be able to go out there and network, meaning they're able to find people that could potentially use their skills. They join groups. They do all sorts of things and to enable themselves to get out there and be seen. And then they develop some sort of pitch. Like they have some sort of way of talking about their firm, of talking about the sort of work that they do that makes clients and other people potentially enthusiastic about them. And if you watch people do it and how they do it, we're very good at it. They figure out how to pitch people. They figure out how to get interest in them. They just have a kind of a method to it. And that's what you need to figure out. If you don't figure that out, you're going to run into problems. I think just one of the biggest things that I would recommend is you need to start somewhere. Most people believe that they should have the ability to get out there and generate a lot of work immediately. Some people will try for years, and you need to do that. You need to keep doing whatever you can and spend years often trying to network, getting shot down, making mistakes, and then you need to pick yourself up again and again and keep doing it. People will often make one of my mentors said that there was one person he wanted to work with, and he cold called him every week for, 20 years before the guy finally took his call, which I thought was very funny. So if you really want something, you'll do whatever you can to go after it. And that would be my biggest piece of advice. With that, I think I'm going to end this a little early today. I do have a lot of extra questions here, it looks like, but I will try to answer some of these and do a separate video for them. I do have to get going a little early today. But I certainly appreciate everyone being here. And I'm glad we finally finished this webinar. As I told you, it was very funny. The first time I did this, I didn't think people would want to hear about economics. So I was like, oh, this sounds like a really dry topic. And then everyone was mad. And then the next time I did it, which was last week, there was a power failure. I'm glad we finally got this done today, and it makes me happy. Thank you, everyone. And I will talk to everyone next week. Thanks.